My interest in modeling started when I was a young boy. There was a channel in Canada we used to get from a feed from the United States. It was called Buffalo 29, and on a Saturday they had adventure theater, and they'd show a kung fu movie and then a war movie on the weekends. And in the winter time, this was very important as a child in Canada, because you know, in the winter it's awful. You don't want to go outside. It's cold, and it's you know, and if you're not going skiing for the weekend, you're stuck at home. So I would watch the kung fu movie, and then I'd watch the war movie, and you'd watch all these old, and it wouldn't always be like Tora or Midway. You know, you'd have all these lesser known Sands of Iwo Jima, and you know, all these movies, but it sparked the interest. So my first interest in modeling was anything John Wayne was in, all those movies. Like, so I like building Corsairs and Zeros, and I still have a passion for Japanese subjects because of that. And, you know, I loved it. So that's what spawned my interest. And then as I developed as a modeler, I started discovering that actually the Russians had tanks and airplanes, and you find out all these different things because your interest is spawned by a good old war movie. And then one of the ones I used to love, we had a television program that was shown every day. You had Hogan's Heroes, and then you had the Rat Patrol. And the Rat Patrol really got me interested in desert. So I started building all the Africa Corps and all the airfix, little 72nd scale airfix figures. And I'll remember exactly, you know, the guy with the binoculars, and he had his hand up in the air. But all this stuff, and it was playing in a sandbox with my neighbor up the street, Tommy O'Hara, and we used to build all of our tanks and all of these legions of troops, and we'd get into his sandbox in his backyard and fight a war. And that sort of, you know, you'd build them as quickly as you could, and then you'd fight and fight and fight. But as we got older, him and I said, you know, we bought an airbrush, and then we tried airbrushing, and then it just sort of developed, and it was fine scale modeler. We started going to the hobby shop, and obviously in Canada we got fine scale modeler, and I started reading fine scale modeler and reading about Cookie Sewell's articles, Shepard Payne, Francois Verlinden, and you find these guys were the inspiration, because they took what we were doing was, you know, building them to play with them, and all of a sudden you open this magazine, you see Shepard Payne building a 25th scale Tiger tank with the fenders all bent, and you just look at it and you're like, wow, you know, it's so far beyond, and it looks so real. And now people, you know, they sort of look at what Francois Verlinden and Shepard Payne were doing all these years ago, and they say, well, that's dated now. But when you think about it, back then when they were doing it, it was mind-blowing. So that is what took me from, you know, building it to play in the sandbox and have a fight, and, you know, and all blowing up stuff and setting them on fire even, but into starting to look at adding detail and saying, well, okay, well, I want to have my fenders bent a little bit. So you'd hold the lighter underneath the plastic, and you'd bend the fender, and then you'd stick a sewing needle through it to make bullet holes, and you'd have a Tiger tank that was covered in bullet holes all the way around. But still, it was the introduction. That was the start. And then, you know, as I got older, when I hit the age of 14, I just sort of, that was it. Lost interest in modeling. I found women and beer and all sorts of other stuff that I shouldn't really say. But no, then there was like a big period of years where I didn't do anything. And then when I got married, had my first son, John, I just said, right, I can't go out to the pub every night and go out drinking. I've got to be a father. And so I said, I need a hobby. So I used to do this as a child, so I'll go back. And I did it. And then once again, started reading magazines. I read Military Modeling and Sam, and then all of a sudden you see, oh, there's all this stuff that guys are doing that, you know, you got etched parts and resin and all this, and it just went from there. I just started getting right back into it, and ended up that was it. I was hooked.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.